All right, so the IRS finds itself in more hot water once again. So, a recent disclosure made to Congress highlights that the contractor, the IRS contractor, who a number of years ago stole taxpayer information, the two high profile people were Donald Trump and Elon Musk. He stole about 70,000 tax return documents. That was the original estimate. And he leaked it to news organizations. Now, in the recent memorandum that they sent over to Jim Jordan, he's a congressman out of Ohio, they've now revealed that the original estimate of 70,000 was substantially understated, and the actual amount of disclosures were 405,000 taxpayers had their information leaked to the media, and about 89% of those impacted were business entities. So what effectively happened here is he went through the database looking for high-profile people, namely rich individuals, and after he had their Form 1040 individual returns, he scanned through and looked at what type of business entities they were invested in, so partnerships, S corps, other C corp returns, and then gathered that information as well, and then sent all or most of it over to news organizations for them to publish that data. Now, the perpetrator here, Charles Littlejohn, he wasn't an employee, he was a contractor, but he still had access to all this data, and he pled guilty last year and was sentenced to 5 years in prison for that conduct. Now, in this letter here, we have the actual notice that was sent to Congressman Jordan. So this is from the Treasury Department. It was dated February 14th. And in the letter here, they acknowledge with quite some precision that the IRS has mailed notifications to 405,427 taxpayers whose information was inappropriately disclosed. And then again, approximately 89% of those taxpayers are business entities. Now, it's important to remember here that tax return data is highly, highly confidential, right? You're not supposed to disseminate that to any other party unless you have their express permission. And the IRS internally, even though they might have access to the system, so you might have a contractor or an employee that has access to the database, they are not permitted to just kind of scan through the database looking at individual or business returns. That's beyond their purview. So what he did was certainly criminal and certainly not appropriate conduct for an IRS individual. Now, some tax return data is public. So, for example, if we look at taxnotes.com, our friends over there, what they do is they compile and publish all of the presidential candidate returns, which they voluntarily disclose. And so these Form 1040 returns and some of their business returns are available, but that's because these individuals gave their express permission to have this data released in the effort to be transparent, right? Let the American people know what their income is, what their expenses are, and get a little more insight onto their annual kind of earnings. Now, you can see up here the current administration, there's President Trump, and then Vice President J.D. Vance. Now, what you notice here is there's 0 returns uploaded for J.D., and that's because he wasn't a presidential candidate. And I guess from what I remember during the campaign, I don't think he was ever pressed on disclosing this. President Trump has certainly repeatedly been pressed to disclose his returns, and he's chosen not to, right? So if you look at the available returns here, you can see that there's returns up to 2020, but for all those current years, or all the recent years, he's decided that he's just not going to give anything up. And most of these last 2 years, I believe, or actually all of them, were leaked as part of that the Charles Littlejohn disclosure. So, apart from this, what other kind of return information is public? Well, nonprofit returns are also public. So there is a database over at ProPublica. So ProPublica, the nonprofit disclosure. So nonprofits have to file a 990. If they're foundations, they file 990 PFs. they have to disclose that information. And so if you're ever curious about the returns or financial data that might be running through a nonprofit, you could search for it here by name or EIN, look that up and get a look at their Form 990 returns. Now, what do you do if you were a victim of this breach? So the IRS did publish a notice in their newsroom. So this was dated quite a while ago, last year, May 10th. And they're letting taxpayers know that if you receive this letter 6613, alerting them to unauthorized disclosure, was likely the result of this Charles Littlejohn disclosure where he stole over 400,000 tax return documents. So if you have been victim to this disclosure, you're going to get a letter like this in the mail, and then it's going to direct you to additional resources that you can follow to try to make sure that your data is, and your company is protected. All right, so that covers it for this update. I hope that was helpful. Again, not a good day for the IRS because the original estimate of 70,000 is already egregious. We don't want taxpayers' private details and information being just thrown around on the internet. But now that it's been upgraded to over 405,000 disclosures, certainly not a good look. All right, so that covers it. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next news update. Thank you.